Welcome back, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. My name is Sarah Carter. I used to be a licensed clinical psychologist. I ran a private practice out of a rented office space just off Wacker Drive, about 3 blocks from the river. I saw maybe 12 patients a week, mostly professionals in their 30s and 40s. Burnout, work stress, anxiety, and relationships. I kept a stack of journals by the window and a chair that faced away from the door so no one would feel boxed in. That was my life. Structured, quiet, predictable. Then the first alerts started coming in, not from the news, but from patients. One man said his brother's neighborhood had been locked down overnight without notice. A woman said her sister worked in a hospital where patients were being moved without diagnosis. Then came the story of a teenager restrained and left in a hallway because he wouldn't stop biting his own tongue. I asked questions. I took notes. I tried to stay clinical even when I felt the back of my neck stiffen from the patterns that didn't line up with anything I'd studied. The morning everything collapsed. I was at home. It was a Wednesday. My husband Aaron had already left for work, though I don't know why. Half the city had stopped showing up to offices, and the trains were mostly empty. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor above a grocery store. That day, I went to the window when I heard shouting. Not the usual city noise, but tight, frantic shouting. There were people running in the street. One man knocked over a trash bin and didn't even look back. A police car rolled slowly through the intersection, not chasing anyone, just coasting. The lights were on, no siren. I called Aaron. He didn't answer. I called again 5 minutes later. I left a message asking him to come home right away. 10 minutes after that, I saw a black helicopter pass overhead, low enough that the windows rattled. No markings, no announcements. That was the moment I stopped pretending it was going to blow over. I grabbed our emergency bag, just a basic one I'd built after that derecho storm 2 years ago, and waited by the door with the radio on low. I had a revolver in the closet, the kind my uncle gave me when I moved into the city alone after grad school. I loaded it. Aaron didn't come back until after dark. He was limping, pale, soaked in sweat. He wouldn't speak at first. I pulled off his shirt and saw the bite, right above the hip, deep and messy. He said nothing until I asked him what happened. He told me he saw a man attack a woman in the stairwell of his office. Not fighting, attacking, biting. He tried to pull the guy off her and got bitten himself. He made it home on foot, cutting alleys and staying low. The wound was already hot. I cleaned it the best I could, packed it, wrapped it, and gave him water. He lay on the couch, shaking. I locked the front door and pushed our dresser in front of it. I didn't sleep that night. I watched him. By dawn, he was not conscious anymore. I sat on the floor with the revolver in my lap. I kept checking his breathing. It turned shallow. Then it turned wet. Then it stopped. I waited 20 minutes. When he opened his eyes again, they were not his. I did what I had to do. I do not talk about that to ask for pity. I write it now to explain the kind of person I became. I don't make decisions on feelings. I follow the pattern, I gather data, and I act when it is time. The city fell fast after that. Cell towers started to go dark. The emergency broadcast switched to pre-recorded loops. Nobody came to clear the streets. A group of us formed by chance. I met Joel in an old parking garage after I took shelter there during a thunderstorm. He had a folding map taped to a window and a pile of rags soaked in bleach. We agreed not to get in each other's way. Then Rita joined us, dragging a shopping cart full of bottled water and a fire extinguisher. Then Sasha, then Omar. None of us had any plan beyond surviving the next day. We moved from place to place. Office buildings, retail stores, storage units. Each location gave us a few days, maybe a week, before we had to leave. Infected wandered through, or other groups arrived, or the water gave out. You learn to pack quickly. You learn not to argue when someone says it's time to go. The worst days were when people begged us for help and we couldn't give it. A woman with a baby, a man with burns, a kid who said he hadn't eaten in 3 days. You harden. Not because you want to, but because you don't have enough to offer without taking it from someone else in your group. And if you do that, the whole thing breaks. We had no name for our group, no hierarchy. I didn't lead anything. I just became the one who kept track of the rules. When we should move, what signs meant risk, how long someone could be quarantined if scratched. I took notes in the back of an old ledger book. I marked every food cache, every water source, and every radio frequency that ever gave a pulse. When someone got hurt, I helped Joel keep the wound clean. When someone froze during a run, I talked them back into motion. I wasn't strong. I wasn't trained. I just did not want to die stupidly. 6 months in, we found the tower. We were moving through the downtown loop, scouting for intact buildings with height and line of sight. Sasha was the one who pointed it out. It stood tall and straight, windows mostly intact, lobby still sealed. That alone was rare. We watched it for 2 days, saw only a few infected pass nearby. No human activity. When we tested the doors, we found them chained but not barricaded. It looked untouched. That scared me more than if it had been burned or overrun. It felt like a trap, but we needed shelter. We needed elevation. So we went in. The first night, we slept on the 12th floor in a vacant office with no windows. We pushed cabinets against the stair doors and used chalk to mark which doors we had checked. Every creak in the floor or whisper of wind down the elevator shaft kept us awake. But nothing came. No infected, no people, just dust and cold. The next morning, we split into pairs and mapped the entire structure. 55 floors, 2 stairwells, 4 dead elevators, and a mechanical level every 15 floors. 1 roof hatch, locked but not sealed. We built a plan. We moved the rest of the group in that week. 11 people total. Some we picked up on the road, others joined by way of mutual trade or rescue. Benji came after we pulled him out of a stairwell pile-up. Evelyn found us by following the radio tone Omar kept broadcasting every evening. Shauna walked in during a lightning storm, wearing a rain poncho made out of a tarp and carrying 3 sealed food buckets. We gave each one a job and watched to see if they followed orders. If they did, they stayed. If not, we didn't keep them long. That was when I wrote the rules on the stairwell door. Not because I wanted control, but because too many people had died from confusion and bad judgment. No one goes out alone. No one leaves without armor. No contact with strangers without a vote. All disputes are brought to the meeting room on 37, not shouted through the hallway. Weapons stay out of common areas. Lights go out at sundown. No one dies alone. I did not explain or justify them. I just wrote them in clean block letters with a permanent marker. People followed them because they worked. Because when followed, we stayed alive. We started calling the place the Citadel. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't meant to be dramatic. It was just the name that stuck. The walls were thick. The stairwells were choke points. The roof gave us water. The height gave us warning. It wasn't safe, but it was defensible. In this world, that is the best you can get. That's who I am. That's how I got here. I am not a leader by blood or nature. I do not give speeches. I do not hold hands during grief. I write rules. I check straps. I patch walls. I say no when it's needed. And I remember my husband as he was. Calm, kind, smart. I remember what happened to him too. That's the part that keeps me from making excuses for anyone. Even myself. Especially myself. So when people ask why we don't open the doors to every voice crying in the alley, when they ask why I keep the schedule strict and the punishments clear, when they ask why I make us vote instead of acting on what feels right, it's because I've seen what happens when feelings run ahead of judgment. I've seen how fast someone you love can turn into something that wants to rip you apart. I've buried that moment deep enough to function, but not so deep I forget it. I never will. That's what keeps the Citadel standing. That's what keeps people breathing. And that's what I remind myself every time I pick up the chalk, check the log, and walk the stairwells at night. Quiet steps. Every landing cleared. Every door tested. 1 line at a time. That's the job now. We have floors for specific things because that stops chaos. The first 5 floors are dark and blocked. We pulled down the metal roll-downs from the old storefronts and pinned them shut with holes and bolts. We stacked heavy bookcases across the inside of the glass doors and filled planters with rubble to make dead weight. We ran fishing line from door handles to little bells that ring when anyone touches the wrong plate. If an infected bumps the roll-down, it makes a dull drum sound and moves on. If a person pries, an air horn fires, and everything hears it for blocks. We do not go down there unless it is for a set task and in pairs. The next few floors are our delay tier. We built a path that looks open but does not go anywhere. You follow it and hit a row of filing cabinets that have rails and stops. We call it the zipper path. We know where to step to pass between cabinets. Strangers do not. Carpets are stripped in the wrong places, and marbles sit in shallow trays, ready to roll if someone moves fast. The marbles tell us when impatient feet are running. We learned fast that a person who runs makes mistakes, and loud mistakes bring infected, so we keep our steps firm and slow on those floors. We set the workshops around floor 11. We keep spare leather, hand tools, bicycle parts, rope, harnesses, and a simple wood gas stove shell we use for short jobs when the generator stays quiet. We tune armor on racks. We fix broken buckles on helmets and clean face shields with soap and water. We write everything down on a board on the wall. If you take a crowbar and a headlamp, you return a crowbar and a headlamp. If you dull a machete, you write it and sharpen it before the end of your watch. It is boring. That is why it works. We sleep between the mid-30s floors, where the wind does not pound the windows as hard. We hang blankets for privacy and make little rooms out of cubicle walls and doors we pulled off empty units. No candles. Shielded lamps only, and only when we run the small generator for a short wash or a repair. We cook on floor 33 in a room that used to be a shared amenity space. It has 4 sturdy concrete pillars and a vent stack we could pipe through. The stove is a steel drum with a baffle and a pipe that runs into the vent. It draws, not perfect but well enough that we do not choke on smoke. We keep the flame low. We do not waste fuel. We drink rain. On the roof we spread tarps that slope into food-grade barrels. We anchor the tarps with ropes and concrete chunks, and we check them every morning and every night. When it rains, we gather. When it does not rain, we ration harder, and push the bicycle pump on the mechanical floor to draw seep and roof catch into clean barrels. We filter through cloth and boil what we will drink. 1 gallon a person is the target. Sometimes we do less. When the barrels get low, no one needs to be told to hold back. The sight of a blue barrel with its bottom showing does the work. Our group has names and simple jobs. Joel was an emergency medical technician, and he runs medical on floor 12. Sasha studied structural engineering and draws plans and tells us where a wall will fail or hold. Omar was a bike courier, and he knows side routes and service corridors. Rita worked hotel security and understands shifts and quiet patrols. Benji is young but has good hands and can fix a lot with junk. Tuck was a motorcycle mechanic and keeps the generator clean and the ropes checked. Evelyn taught middle school science and now grows short greens in planters on the roof and makes simple soap from scraps. Shauna did sanitation for the city and keeps our latrines working and our trash under control. Luis was a stage rigger and runs the pulleys. Maya was a film student and writes the watch log and keeps spirits up with little notes in the stairwell. The rules are posted and we read them out loud every Sunday. No one goes out alone. Armor on past floor 35. Helmets on if you leave the building. No strangers admitted. If the circle votes to bend that rule, strangers sit in the trap tier for 3 days. Light discipline after sundown. Gear out equals gear back. Knives and pistols stay off the floor when we meet. Everyone takes a watch. No one dies alone. It looks strict on the wall. In practice it feels lighter because choice is smaller and clear. You do the job, you write it down, you sleep. I remember the first morning when the tower felt like ours. I opened the roof hatch and a cold breeze hit the face shield. The tarps held a pocket of water that pulled the fabric down into clean bowls. I moved the hose from a full barrel to the next one. The river below moved slow and had trash along the edges. The bridge did not lift. Across the alley, 2 infected gave light pushes to a roll down and wandered away. Omar joined me with the little grease pencil. He marked the time on the parapet so we would know when the alley sees traffic. I nodded, and we went back inside. Breakfast needed water. The first week was just work. We hauled planters from a neighbor roof using Luis's pulley. We took soil from tree wells and rooftop beds and filled bins for greens. We pulled cabinets and doors to make barricades. We cut carpet strips and nailed them down in a pattern that let us step quiet while a stranger would make noise. We set marbles in shallow trays near corners and put a chalk dot on the wall next to each tray so a watch can check at a glance if anyone disturbed it. We put the generator on a steel tray in a room with a vent and ran a short, rigid conduit to avoid loose cords. The generator ran for less than 1 hour a day, and we logged every minute. No one touched it unless I or Tuck signed off. We tested the bicycle pump rig on the mechanical floor. The standpipe had dead pressure, so we built a coupler and a chain drive to spin a pump with a bicycle. The first try leaked. The second try fed a trickle into a barrel through a hose. It was slow and ugly, but it was water. We took turns. 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, then down the line. Joel made sure no one pushed to the point of confusion. If someone wobbled or stared, he pulled that person off the bike and handed the seat to the next. You want to help, but you help by not passing out and becoming one more problem to drag upstairs. One night a woman screamed below. The sound came up the stairwell, thin and sharp. A child cried behind her. The air horn had not gone off. Rita put on her helmet and so did I. We stood at the barricaded door to the trap tier and listened. The woman said she was alone with her son. She said she was not bitten. Every part of me wanted to open it on the spot. I told Rita to call the circle. We met on floor 37, where the doors swing out towards strangers. We held a quick vote. 6 wanted to let them into quarantine. 5 did not. That was enough. We opened the zipper path to floor 8 and passed water and food through a crack without making eye contact. We told the woman 3 days. She said she understood. She kept her voice quiet. The boy coughed. We closed the door and locked it. Those 3 days were longer than any other 3 days in the tower. We checked every 12 hours. Joel looked for bite marks through the door crack with a headlamp and face shield. The boy ran a bit of fever, which happens with shock and cold. Joel pushed fluids and waited. On the 3rd check, he brought them into the decon room and washed their hands, hair, and faces with soap and warm water from the short generator run. He looked at the mother's arms. They were scraped from debris, not bites. He cleared both. We gave them a little room on floor 32 near the latrine and set extra eyes on the stair. We had 2 more mouths to feed, but we did not feel worse. We felt like we had not thrown people away. We adjusted rations and posted the change. No one argued. We all saw the water line in the barrels and the food board in the kitchen. The board lists each item and a number next to it. Beans, rice, canned fish, shelf milk, oil, and a few saved treats like jam or instant coffee. At the end of each day, Maya writes what was opened and what was left. The list does not lie, and no one wants to be the person who drags the chalk line too fast to the bottom. Shauna asked for a run to a hotel across the avenue because she wanted bleach and soap to hold the flu at bay. She picked a team. I went with her and Omar. We wore helmets with visors and heavy leather. We carried crowbars and a short tool roll. We crossed at dawn when the shadows were long and streets were quiet. The service entrance was chained, but the chain was thin. Omar cut it with a grinder we spun by hand. Inside the service hall, we found 3 housekeeping carts with small soaps and little bottles. We found 2-gallon jugs of bleach on a shelf. We did not rush. We set down what we carried in a stack and built our load in layers, heavy on the bottom. On the way out, a door pinched and squealed. That noise ran down the corridor like a line on water. 2 infected came up the hallway, fast for the first steps, then slower. We stayed in place and let them come. I took the first with a crowbar aimed at the side of the head. Omar took the second with a hammer. We did not make a show of it, and we did not speak. We pulled the bodies by the legs into a room and shut the door behind them. We washed our gloves with a bleach rag and lifted our load. We marked the door with chalk and a half circle that means do not open unless you must. Back across the avenue, we pulled the load up with Luis's rope. He builds simple rigs with pulleys that cut the weight in half. He uses hand signals because radios are loud. A fist means stop. 2 fingers up means up. A flat hand means hold. We moved the bleach and soap into the decon room and logged it. Shauna smiled for the first time in 2 days. That night the kitchen smelled clean. That smell gets into everything. You do not realize how much you miss it until it returns. A week later, a small group tried the front doors at dusk. We heard the gentle pry. We heard the first air horn. We did not answer. The sound of their talk told me they were calm and careful. That is worse than chaos. Careful means patient, and patient means they come back. The horn put them off and they left. We set 2 extra people on watch and checked the delay tier twice that night. No marbles had moved. The zipper path sat as we left it. In the morning, we found a mark on the roll-down. It was the kind of mark a person leaves to see if someone cleans it off. We left it alone. We do not send messages. We do not mean to defend. Then the storm came. The sky had weight to it all afternoon, and close to sundown the first big drops hit. The tarps filled and started to pull their ropes. One grommet tore out with a snapping sound. The fabric flapped hard. If it went, we would lose a quarter of our harvest. I clipped into the roofline and Luis clipped in behind me. We crawled along the edge and moved slow at the grommet while the fabric slashed at the air. I held the edge while he drove a new tie through the tarp and around a ring we fixed to the parapet. My gloves went slick with rain and soap from old residue. When we got the line secure, we lay there and breathed. The barrels took the load. We could hear the water hit the bottom of the next one and rise. During the same storm, we had a fire on floor 11. The generator's extension line had rubbed on a metal lip we missed. Insulation wore thin and sparked. We saw the flash and the plastic started to burn. Tuck grabbed the fire blanket we keep rolled by the tray. We smothered the cord and dumped baking soda. The room filled with a sharp smell. We did not use water. We stood still and counted. When the glow stopped, we pulled the whole cord and threw it in a bucket. We moved the generator a foot and built a rigid metal guide for the new line so it can never rub again. I wrote a new note on the wall. No loose cords. Not ever. On a quiet afternoon, the boy we brought in chased a paper plane into the stairwell landing. He touched one of the bell strings and 3 bells rattled in a row. Rita moved fast and scooped him up. No infected came. We looked at him and he looked back with eyes that did not understand what the sound meant. That night we met on floor 37 and wrote a new line on the rule board. Children do not cross painted lines without an adult. The boy's mother took the extra night watch that came with the rule break. No one pushed the point. That is how we live. Set the line, assign the cost, move on. We had a theft the next week. 2 cans of beans and a pouch of rice went missing. The board did not match the shelves. I did not call anyone a thief out loud because that word sticks to a person's face and is hard to wash off. I asked Maya to check the bags and bins for miscounts. She found nothing. I went to each person and asked for a private pocket check. Benji had the food. He stared at the cans like he had not seen them before. He said he got scared about hunger at night and told himself he would put it back. He did not put it back. I asked if he was hungry in a way that made his hands shake. He said no. I asked if he felt sick. He said no. We took it to the circle. No raised voices. We voted. 3 nights on extra watch and 2 full days of water pumping with no break, and a written apology on the board. He served it and did not skip a minute. After that, he always signed for his tools on time. A cut on Tuck's hand turned into a worry. He sliced a palm on a vent edge while moving a duct. It seemed small, but it sat red and open. Joel cleaned it with saline and soap and closed it with adhesive strips. He started a course of antibiotics and wrote the dose and the time on a card. He used half the bottle on that one wound because a hand infection that goes bad can take a person out of work and out of life in a place like this. We put pharmacy run soon on the task board. That meant risk. It also meant we did not ignore reality just because we feared the price of dealing with it. We did not plan for flood water in the basement because it looked dry the first 2 weeks. That changed. Without sump pumps, seepage built up around a crack and climbed step by step. If it hit the bottom of the storage tier, we would have mold and loss. The mechanical cages had parts we could use to make a drain, but the cages sat behind a rusted lock in the basement where the water lapped. We picked a team. Me, Sasha, Omar, and Luis. We put on armor. We took headlamps with red filters and short tethers on our tools so we would not drop them into dark water. We went down the stair in single file and stepped slow when the water reached our shins. The basement had a smell of oil and wet dust. Our lights hit the surface and scattered. We kept talking to a minimum. Luis tapped the wall with his crowbar every few steps to sense the space. Sasha held the strap on the tool bag and counted doors. Omar watched the water and the corners. We found 2 infected caught in a tangle of plastic wrap and wire by the loading dock. They were not fast. We used the crowbar and a hammer, 2 quick strikes each, and pulled them away into a corner beyond the waterline. We wiped our gloves with a bleach rag and kept going. No drama, no speeches. The lock on the mechanical cage gave after steady pressure. Inside we found 2 valves, a coil of hose, and a tool roll that had not rusted out. We built a small sled from a broken pallet and shifted the load onto it to keep it above the water. We turned back toward the stair. That is when we heard shoes on concrete that were not ours. Slow steps, careful steps, and low voices. Not many, maybe 2 or 3. They were testing doors, careful and patient. That word again. I raised my hand. We froze. I gave Luis 2 fast squeezes and 1 whistle note that means fall back, no contact. He nodded. We moved up the stair to the delay tier. Rita and Tuck were already on the far side of the zipper path. We set the sliding shelf trap and stepped behind a door with a narrow slit. The voices came up the stair. A man said they only wanted to look. He was calm. Rita pulled the cord that drops a shelving row across the landing. It hit the stoppers and locked. A second voice tested it once and stopped. Then nothing. We stood still and counted long breaths. The water down below made a dull sound against the door. The air sat stale. An hour passed. Steps went down. No one spoke. We did not chase. If you chase, you give up the one thing the tower gives you, which is height and time. Sasha put the valves on the standpipe at the mechanical floor. We used the hose to run a controlled drain into a shaft that carried water to a place where it could collect without spreading through storage. The basement dropped inch by inch and then by a foot. The smell changed from oil to cold. We checked the stair for tracks after. There were none. Whoever tested us could move with care. I told everyone to log any sound on the lower landings. We added flood checks every 3rd night to the rule board and assigned names. By then the mother and boy had settled. The boy learned the painted lines. He helped Evelyn with planters and learned to pinch off a basil sprout. He did not ask questions we could not answer. He watched the door during meetings and kept his hands in his lap. His mother took the worst shifts without complaint. That alone earned quiet trust. The circle does not bless or curse people. It watches, it assigns, and it remembers. We still had to resupply medical. We picked a small clinic tucked between 2 office blocks. Joel said the storage cabinet inside had a certain brand of antibiotics and bandages. He had worked that neighborhood once, and the clinic had decent stock. The clinic sat behind 2 sets of glass doors. The outer set had cracked but not collapsed. We chose a clear morning. Team was me, Joel, and Omar. Armor, helmets, shields, and tools. We carried 1 pistol with a half load of rounds as a last resort, and prayed we would not need it. A pistol helps you feel safe and makes you loud at the same time. I hate that trade. We moved in short runs between cover. We watched windows for faces and looked at the shadows behind doors. We used a small mirror on a stick to see around corners. The clinic doors did not give to a light pull. Omar used a wedge and a quiet pry. The glass popped with a small scrape. We entered and stood still for a count of 30. The smell was stale. Papers lay on the floor. Joel went straight to the cabinets. He moved slow and scanned labels. I kept my eyes on the hallway. Omar checked rooms with a headlamp and kept his light down. We had the bag half full when a fast infected hit the glass with a thump. It must have seen our motion from the street. It hit again and found a rhythm. Others came. A slow one, then another fast one. The door held because the angle of the jam was good. We did not waste time. Joel closed the cabinet. We loaded the last box. Omar picked the window farther down that had a crack near the latch. He cracked it, slipped out and scanned. He motioned us forward. We exited in a line and moved along the wall. The fast infected in the door pushed and slid and pushed. We did not run. We walked, firm and controlled, around the corner and out of sight. We turned a second corner and crossed the street. Only then did we pick up speed. When we were 2 blocks away, we stopped in a doorway to listen. Nothing followed. We did not feel brave. We felt careful and plain. Back home, Joel inventoried the bag, and we wrote down every item. Bandages, adhesive, gauze, 1 short course of antibiotics, pain relievers. I wanted more, but wanting does not make shelves fill. We placed half the stock in the main medical shelf, and half in a sealed bin hidden behind a vent. The stash was for the day after a loss. A second set of hands knew where it sat. No one else did. That is not about trust. That is about redundancy. Nights in the tower are not quiet in the way people think. The city breathes through open ducts and carries long echoes. Some are traffic sounds that got stuck in the system months ago. Some are clanks caused by wind. Some are feet. We do not guess. We check. We do rounds with a headlamp set to dim red and a whistle in hand. We stop and listen at each landing and touch the door to feel if something scrapes it. We look at our marble trays and the chalk dots beside them. If a marble moved, we circle the dot in chalk and mark the time on the watch log. We do not chase noise. We build a picture over hours and days. I felt better about the tower one afternoon when I saw how the kitchen ran without anyone saying a word. Shauna had a pot of beans boiled with a strip of dried meat. She measured with the same metal cup we use for every portion. Evelyn brought down a bin with greens that had grown enough to pinch. Rita stood at the door and checked helmets and gloves for cracks and grit. Benji sharpened a blade against a stone and wiped it clean. Maya wrote on her board, day number, head count, meals served. No one asked who was in charge because the task ran itself. Order like that is not natural in a place like this. You have to build it piece by piece and protect it from small cracks. We had a second contact from the careful strangers during sunset the next week. They hit the lobby again. That time a voice called up, not loud but clear. He said they were not raiders. He said they only wanted supplies to carry east. He said we could name the price. I did not trust the pitch. A person who talks like that has practiced it. He is used to getting doors open by sounding reasonable. We did not answer. He waited. He said he knew we were up there. He said he could hear us breathing, which was a lie and a trick to make us feel seen. We kept still. He laughed a small laugh. Then nothing. After a minute we heard feet move away. I do not know if we will see him again. I know we will be ready if he returns. 2 days later the radio cracked for the first time in weeks. It was a burst of numbers and a set of coordinates and something about a camp. The voice sounded recorded. It sounded like a loop. I let it play twice and then turned the volume down and pulled the antenna so it would not pull noise. I taped a note under the set that said, "We do not leave for radio ghosts. If we hear a live voice and a real landmark we trust, we can talk. A recording is a trap or a memory. Either way it gets you killed if you chase it." A day of rain gave us a small holiday. The barrels filled to the necks and hissed when drops hit. We set out clean mugs and boiled water for a wash. Joel ran a hot rinse for medical linens during the generator window. The kitchen gave bigger portions that night. It did not turn into a party. We ate slow. We let our shoulders drop. We found a middle ground where you remember you are a person and not a job. Then the basement rose again. A crack in a wall we had not seen widened, and the seep came from 2 places instead of 1. If we did not move fast, we would have a mold problem. We did not have enough bleach to soak a whole floor. Sasha marked a plan on a door with a marker. We needed a second path to the controlled shaft. We needed to free a stuck valve. We needed to keep the load light so we could work fast when the water rose in little waves. We waited for early morning when the city sits like it is holding its breath. Then we went down again. This time, we brought a second rope to clip our tool bag to the railing as we moved. We brought wooden wedges to brace a door while we worked the valve. We moved the same as before. Slow, steady, with taps on the wall and eyes on the corners. We found one infected lying in the water. It did not move. We gave it a careful test with the crowbar. It did not answer. We passed on. At the valve, we worked as a unit. Sasha called the turn direction. Luis put the wrench on the stem. Omar braced the pipe with a strap so the twist would not shear the corroded anchors. I watched the haul. We turned in quarter turns and rested between. No hero moves. The valve gave with a dull sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. I do not like that kind of sound in an old building, but the line took flow and the drain picked up. The water dropped faster. We cleaned up and got out. When we came back to the delay tier, I saw a small sign someone had left on the far wall. It was a chalk circle with 3 short lines through it. I did not know what it meant. It was not ours. That meant someone had been close enough to make marks without making noise for us. I felt that cold switch flip in my head, and I took it straight to the circle. We erased the mark and added a new watch pattern that put a person in the delay tier at random times during the day with a silent post behind a door slit. We put Rita on the first pattern. She has a way of breathing that you do not hear. The next contact did not come for 4 days. We heard nothing, and then a light knock at the lobby door right at dusk. 1 knock, a pause, 1 knock. We waited. The voice that followed sounded different. A woman said they had a wounded man and needed a place to set him down. She did not ask for entry. She did not use the practiced lines. She said she would leave him if that was what it took. We held the circle in minutes. No one liked it. No one wanted to leave a man to die on a sidewalk. No one wanted to open the door either. We voted to move him into the trap tier and treat him through the door. We set up a small station at floor 8. Joel took the lead with gloves and a shield. We cracked the door and pulled the man onto a blanket. He was grey. He had a wound on his side that looked torn, not a bite but bad. He had fever. Joel worked with what we had. Wash, pressure, a small dose of pain relief. The woman stayed outside the roll down and did not move closer. She asked nothing. We gave her a bottle of water. She held it and did not drink. The man did not last to morning. We covered him and carried him down with the woman's help. We gave her a few cans and a bar of soap and watched her walk away with 1 other person. We stood over the door after for a long time with nothing to say. That night I read the rules out loud. I did not add a line. I wanted to write something about mercy, but rules do not carry feelings well. They carry actions. The action did not change. We would help through a door if the circle allowed it. We would not open the core to anyone we did not know. We would not chase voices at dusk. I slept on the floor beside the rule board so anyone who woke could see me and know I was not hiding from the hard parts. Morning brought wind that shook the vents. The sound made conversation hard. We did rounds. We checked the marbles. We checked the flood level and the valves. Everything was as it should be. I tried to drink coffee made thin to stretch the jar and could not. I put it back on the hot plate for someone else. I went to the roof and walked the tarps. Ropes were tight. The barrels were steady. The city looked like a map I could read. I stood there longer than I meant to. Omar came up and tapped the parapet with the grease pencil. He marked the time as he always does. I felt normal for a few seconds. Midday, we heard a metal drag above the lobby. It was a roll-down being tested by someone who had never done it before. The rhythm was wrong. We readied the shelf drops and placed ourselves in the path. The drag stopped. Footsteps moved away fast. No voices. No second attempt. I did not like it. I set watches with a rotation that left no gap. The rest of the day was empty. We ate early and sat in the meeting room and kept our helmets close. Close to nightfall, rain started up again, but light. We caught it. We set out 2 extra barrels and linked the hoses. I watched drops strike the tarp and run. I did not think about anything else. The mother came up and stood near me. She did not speak. She looked at the city and held her son's hand. That was all. We went down when the wind picked up. I checked the kitchen and saw more bowls than usual. I did not stop it. That is the trade you make after a day like that. You take the hit on the stock and pay people back for a rough job with a full spoon. After dinner, we ran a short generator window to wash linens and charge radios. The cord did not move on the new guide. Tuck had his eyes on it like it could try to run away. When he shut it down, we heard a small sound from the stair. A single marble rolled and clicked against a board. We started our pattern. Rita took the slit. We waited. A light step touched the first delay point and then pulled back. A different step tried a second. Someone had learned something from last time. We held our breath without meaning to. The steps stopped. After 15 minutes, a voice came through the slit so soft I barely heard it. It said, "We will come back in daylight." Then nothing. I did not know if that was a promise or a trick. Either way, we did not change our schedule. At dawn, we found a chalk mark on the outside of the roll-down. It was a small cross shape, low to the ground. I have seen crews use marks to show a safe line or a hazard. It could mean anything. We cleaned it off. We checked traps. We ate. The day moved in its track. Shauna fixed a leak in a latrine bucket hose with tape. Evelyn replanted a tray after a rough wind night. Luis replaced a pulley line before it frayed through a sheath. Small jobs hold back big failures. By late afternoon, the tension had bled out. That is when you make mistakes. Not from panic, but from relief. I took myself to the workshop and started sorting bolts by size, because that job never ends, and it keeps my hands busy. Maya came by and wrote a small note on a scrap and hung it on the rule board. It said, "Breathe." She draws little boxes and checks one each hour. It is not therapy. It is procedure for stress. It helps keep the edges from curling. I nodded to her and kept sorting. We did not see the careful strangers again that week. We did not trust that quiet. We widened our checks to include the neighbor building roof lines. Omar and Luis set up a small scope on the roof behind a pipe so it would not reflect. We took turns scanning for glass flashes that could be a lens. We did not see any. Either no one watched us, or the person who watched knew better than to show it. That was not comfortable knowledge. We adjusted our entry times for scavenging so no one could pattern us. The next supply run took us to a wholesale basement where we had seen a half pallet of rice under a collapsed set of shelves. We needed rope, a short lever, and quiet. Team was me, Omar, and Benji. We wore full armor even though the basement was a tight space, because cuts happen in tight spaces. We reached the loading bay at first light and slipped through a gap in a gate. Inside, the air was still and dusty. We moved around a spill of broken glass like it was water and crossed to the shelf. The rice was there. The bags were intact. The shelf leg had crumpled and trapped the bottom row. We built a pivot with a pipe and wood and lifted enough to slide the nearest bag free. We did not strain. We worked in small increments. Lift, block, slide. A sound from behind us froze us. It was a cough. Not an infected sound. A person. I looked over the shelf. A man stood at the far end with one hand up, open. He had a length of pipe. He did not move closer. He said he had come for the same thing. His voice shook with effort like he had not had water in a while. I told him we could trade a small bag for something useful, but we would not share a stack. He nodded and showed a little handsaw and a bag of nails. Nails are gold. We made the trade. He kept his distance. We watched each other like two dogs at a line. We finished our lift, tied our load into a bundle, and left by a different exit. We saw him again 3 blocks away on a roof, moving slow with his bag. He did not follow. Back at the tower, we logged the rice and the nails. The nails went into a jar with a lid, and the jar went behind a drawer with a false bottom. We have been burned by losing small, high-value items before. Years ago, I would have laughed at the idea that a jar of nails would be worth more than a bottle of wine. I do not laugh now. I do not drink. I want steady hands and a clean head when the bells rattle. We kept a running routine for 3 weeks after that. Work, watch, eat, sleep, repeat. The roof gave us small greens and a couple tomatoes that tasted like the sun. The bicycle pump did its quiet grind. The latrine stayed bearable because Shauna is strict. Everyone knew the whistles for stop, help, and danger. No one broke rules, or if someone did, he or she caught it fast and corrected course. At night we heard distant engines sometimes. A helicopter once, far off, like a memory. We did not look for it. We have learned that machines that still fly do not stop for people like us. On a morning that began clear, we got a problem that forced us to move in the open. A loose sheet of glass on a neighbor building had broken free and hung by a sliver. The wind had shifted, and if it fell, it would cut our tarp lines and maybe a barrel. Luis saw it through the scope and called it. We could wait and hope for a drop in a safer direction, or we could haul a line over and pull it clear to fall where it would do less damage. Waiting felt like begging luck for a favor. I do not like that posture. We picked a team. Luis, me, and Omar went to the neighbor roof. The stair to that roof was half blocked. We climbed through a gap with helmets and shields and came up under a sky that made every edge sharp. The sheet of glass hung at a corner, swaying. It looked ready to tear loose. We uncoiled a rope, threw a line over a beam, and crawled to a point where Luis could hook the glass with a long pole. We put weight in the rope and set a redirect. He pulled, gentle. The glass let go with a sudden snap and fell in the direction we wanted, smacking the roof and shattering in a glitter that made me blink. Tiny chips hit my visor. We stood still and listened. No shout, no footsteps. We coiled the rope and left. The tarp lines held that night because of that trip. No one cheered. We just ate and posted the story on the board as a small note. As weeks stacked, we forgot sometimes how it feels to be outside at street level for more than 10 minutes. That is dangerous. You get soft to ground hazards. To fix that, I wrote a rule for myself. At least one long ground walk a week. Omar came with me, and we made a loop that takes 40 minutes if you keep a steady pace. We check alleys, count infected, look at old messages sprayed on walls, and mark any door that changed. The loop tells you if a new group is nesting nearby, or if a bridge path opened up by accident. We found a corner bodega that had been quiet now smashed open and stripped. We marked it with a line through the name on our map. We found a city truck still full of traffic cones, which we took to make new stoppers. We saw a fresh cook fire under a bridge and prints that looked like 3 adults. We did not follow. We also added one new habit. On clear nights, we lay on the roof on old mats and look toward the lake. We do not talk much. We just look. We check the little lights that still blink on the far shore from old safety beacons. We listen for horns that no one blows. We let our shoulders drop and breathe. It does not fix anything. It keeps the mind from turning into a narrow hallway. The boy once counted stars. He lost count and laughed the kind of laugh that hurts because it has been inside a long time. His mother smiled and put a hand on his back. That was enough for that night. Then came the day the careful strangers pushed for real. It began with a mark on a door we had never seen. A small wedge of metal had been slipped into a hinge on a stair door 2 floors below the delay tier. It kept the door from closing right. The bells did not ring. Rita found it because she runs her fingers down the hinge edges during checks. She pulled it out and brought it to me. The wedge was clean and new. Someone had tools and time. We added a second bell set to that door, and a hidden pin that drops if the hinge does not sit flush. Then we chose to set a passive watch. 1 person behind the slit, 1 person on the far stair, 1 person in the workshop with the rope for the shelf drops. We ran that for 2 days. On the evening of the second day, the bell tripped. Soft, barely a tick. Then a second tick. We took positions. I could see a piece of shadow through the slit. The shadow moved like a person who had learned to slide his feet on carpet. He reached for the handle. The pin dropped with a little clack. He froze. He whispered. Another shadow moved back a step and set something on the floor. It was a metal bar with a loop. He slid it toward the hinge. He was trying to prop it again. That told me 2 things. He did not have a key. He had not seen our pin. I gave Rita a nod. She pulled the cord. The shelf drop hit the stops and blocked the landing. The shadows stepped back. No rush. Just a quiet retreat. We held still for a full hour. Then we reset and stayed another hour. No return. We wrote it up. We were not flattered by the attention. It meant someone thought it was worth the risk to come inside. After that, we tightened our circles. We stopped rooftop time for a week. We stuck to core work and kept talk short. We did not let fear write new rules we could not keep, but we respected the line between caution and carelessness. That is the line I hold when I go to sleep. That is the line that would have saved my husband if the world had not already been over. I do not say that much. I carry it like weight that keeps my feet on the center of the stair. We ended that month with a steady set of routines that could be a life if someone saw us from a distance. Wake, water, roof, check, cook, clean, watch, sleep. When new problems showed up, we wrote them down and broke them into parts. When someone messed up, he or she took the hit and moved forward. When strangers knocked, we did not pretend to be saints or monsters. We were a group inside a tower trying to keep the lights from going out in our heads. You do that by being boring most days, and ready some days, and unflinching when a choice sits in your hands. Tonight the rain is light. The barrels are a third full. The kitchen served beans with the last of the red pepper flakes. Maya added a line to the board that says summer is close. We will need to tie the tarps tighter in heat and check for algae. We will need to chase shade for the sleeping floors. We will need more soap. These are not epic problems. That is the point. Big problems come and go. Small problems repeat until you exhaust yourself, unless you build a way to meet them without drama. The Citadel is that way we built. I will finish this and go take the watch at the stair door on floor 36. I will lift the visor only enough to hear better. I will keep my pencil and card ready for times and small notes. I will listen to the breath of the building. I will count the minutes between small creaks. I will place my hand on the door once, just to feel the temperature of the metal and know if air moves under it. I will not think about the first days. I will not think about the quiet man at the lobby who spoke like a salesman. I will think about the rules and the way we will read them on Sunday, and whether I need to change any words. I hope I do not. Words should not move as much as some people do. If the careful strangers come back, we will be here. If rain fails for a week, we will ration and push the bicycle pump and make the time pass together. If the flood rises, we will haul and fix and rest. If someone gets sick, we will wash, boil, isolate, and sit with the person who is sick so no one leaves alone. That last part is the one I wrote when I could still smell my husband's skin. That part is not up for debate. I hear a step in the hall behind me. It is Benji. He carries a bundle of rope to Luis. He nods and moves on. He does not look shamed anymore. He looks a little older in his face and sure of his hands. Small repair, small cost, small win. That is the shape of survival. In the morning, I'll go up with Omar and check the tarp lines before the sun climbs high enough to bake them dry. The southern edge always takes more stress, and we've had 3 minor tears this month from wind lift alone. We'll adjust the guy lines, make sure the grommets haven't stretched, and drain any slack pooling above the secondary barrels. While we're up there, we'll scan the skyline. I'll note whether the drawbridge near the west loop has shifted, or if anything's moved on the rooftop of the school 2 blocks north. Someone left a blanket there weeks ago, and we're still not sure if it was a signal or just blown debris. The river below has gone darker, thicker. You don't drink from it anymore, even boiled. That was possible early on, when the collapse was new and runoff hadn't rotted out half the pipes and storm drains. Now the rain is cleaner, and we depend on it. The blue barrels on the roof are everything. One storm makes the difference between a full ration day and having to turn off the stove for a week. It's not drama, it's just numbers. And most days the numbers only work if nothing goes wrong. After that, I'll go back down and handle dishes, or whatever needs hands that morning. No one skips base duties just because they've been here longer. I've worked the latrines. I've taken the food stock count in a storage room with no airflow and mold creeping up the corner seams. Today, it'll probably be the mugs and metal bowls from breakfast, washed with filtered rainwater and a little soap made from Evelyn's last barrel. After that, I'll check the chalkboard outside the meeting room. It'll have updates. Who's assigned to pulley work, who's on stair patrol, who's gathering cloth for patching armor. Most days the board speaks more clearly than anyone else. Downstairs, if a voice calls from the street, we'll follow the rules. Rita or Luis will take position at the slit. The voice will be recorded in the log with exact time, tone, and any words we catch. Then the circle will vote. We don't skip that process, not for anyone. If the vote says no, we hold. If the vote says yes, the person or persons go into the trap tier for 72 hours. No exceptions. Joel checks them. Quarantine means exactly what it sounds like. It's not kindness or cruelty, it's structure. And if the circle vote splits even, which has happened 4 times in the past 3 months, I decide. That's the burden I agreed to. I do not take it lightly, and I do not pretend it is always fair. But in the absence of perfect options, the safer path is chosen. The consequences of mercy in the wrong moment are irreversible. I've lived through that. I won't walk backwards into it again. We've heard distant gunfire echo off high-rise glass in the early morning. We've seen flares that weren't ours paint the sky behind old government buildings, followed by silence. We've intercepted radio traffic in broken Spanish and Polish, and once, a digital tone followed by a static burst that Omar swears was encrypted. We never found out who sent it, and no one answered when we mirrored the burst back. We've seen scavengers set fire to whole first floors just to flush out infected, and in the process, kill anything hiding above that couldn't climb down fast enough. The city doesn't forgive mistakes. It doesn't even remember them. There are rumors of other strongholds. Groups holed up in old train stations, underground parking structures, even a Navy training ship moored near Burnham Harbor. Most of it is false. People like the idea of a fortified base, of radios that link towers across the skyline, of governments reforming out of the ashes and sending out aid with insignias they used to wear. But that's not what we've seen. We've seen smoke columns over warehouses. We've seen signs painted by hand that read, "Safe Zone," and heard screams behind the boarded doors. We've seen a working drone fly overhead once. Small, black, fast. It didn't stop. It didn't circle. Just passed on. It might have belonged to a survivor group. It might have belonged to no one. There are still infected, though fewer than in the early days. Their movement slows in the cold. In the summer, when heat builds in trapped alleys and broken stairwells, they move again, though clumsily. Not all are slow. We've lost 2 people to sprinters, early-stage infected that still carry muscle memory and bone speed. One ran down a hallway with cracked linoleum and tackled Shauna's old partner. She was wearing armor. It still wasn't enough. It happens that fast. We've learned that infected avoid light sometimes, though not always. We've learned that they respond to rhythm, steady clanging, stomping, repeated sounds, but don't always follow voices unless they carry tension. That's why we speak evenly, even when we're angry. That's why Maya posts the radio broadcasts we receive, printed out on the old inkjet we scavenged from an admin floor. That's why Evelyn teaches the children. Yes, we now have 2, how to speak in tones that blend. The older girl doesn't talk much, but the boy, 6 years old, hums when he concentrates. We don't stop him. The hum is low and has no beat. So far, nothing's responded to it. At night, I sometimes sit by the east windows and watch the city blink. The storm beacons still pulse every minute on a few bridges. There's no power to the lights, but the solar capacitors fire if the panels haven't shattered. They serve no purpose now. No boats move under the bridges. But I watch anyway, because those lights mean something resisted collapse. Not survived it, just resisted it. And resistance, even quiet resistance, gives a shape to what we're doing. Tomorrow, we'll boil more rainwater, and someone will file down the edge of the tool bench to keep it from wearing through another generator cable. Sasha will talk about reinforcing the stairwell door on 39 with a heavier frame, and Luis will complain it makes it harder to escape if something breaches from above. They'll argue, then they'll build the frame anyway, because that's what people do when survival stops being guesswork and starts becoming routine. Not comfort. Routine. There's a difference. And when the sun goes down again, we'll read the watch schedule, lock the interior gates, kill the lights, and wait. The wind will pass through the mechanical shafts, and we'll hear the distant whistle of hollow pipes settling. I'll walk the main stairwell once, run my gloved hand along the edge of the door that sticks, and check the marble trays we set up near the corners. Then I'll sit on the floor with the watch log open and mark the first hour. 0 noise, no shift, all clear. That will be the end of the day, and if nothing new happens, it will be a good day. That's all for now, survivor. Thanks for listening. If you want to keep these stories alive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. And a huge thank you to everyone supporting this channel with extra memberships. especially Rangers and Legends. Carlos Herrera, Luca Mod, thanks. Also drop a comment and let me know what story you want to hear next. Jack's Nightmares signing off.